Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. I'm your host Will. To me, my X-Men fans, ever since he had a proper reintroduction in Season 2 of X-Men 97, I think it's high time we started discussing the powers of the first mutant. Let's talk about the rocks of the eternal shore. Let's talk about Apocalypse.
When talking of iconic Marvel villains, Apocalypse is just one of those names that always shows up. And given his impressive range of abilities, this comes as no surprise. When he started out as a kid named En Sabah Nur, which literally translates to the first one, or the first lights. This name had greater significance as he eventually earned the title of the first mutant, as revealed in the Rise of Apocalypse storyline. Somewhere between his appearance in 1985 and later storylines, this godlike mutant also gained powers ranging from self-atomic manipulation to superhuman strength. And today, I will take you through the mechanics of his power and tell you everything about him. How Egypt's first mutant became a living god. Before I jump into his capabilities, let's journey through time to ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago, when En Sabah Nur first came into existence as one of the last remaining immortal externals. While he was abandoned at the edge of the Valley of the Kings, his mere presence inspired fear among those who stumbled upon him, and the Akaba tribe had left him to die in the wild, most likely fated to the desert sun. It also did not help that he was born malformed and ugly, with gray skin and blue stripes running across his face. But thankfully, his luck turned around when a band of nomadic raiders named the Sandstormers stumbled upon this tribe and slew them all. As they were moving ahead in their journey, the Sandstormers' leader, Baal of the Crimson Sands, discovered the young baby and realized the scope of his powers. He then named him En Sabah Nur, or the Morning Light, and took him in as his own son. Over the years, he did end up being forced into slavery, but he took these experiences as training and honed his powers until he could betray his own masters and destroy any obstacles in his path. His harsh childhood had ingrained a survival of the fittest mindset in him, and to add to it, he had an extremist view on mutant supremacy and how any weak beings must be mercilessly destroyed. In no time, he rose in ranks and worked alongside the Celestials to ensure evolution's natural path, a storyline that runs parallel to his fights with the Traveler. In fact, a particularly intense face-off between the two had resulted in Nur severing Traveler's cybernetic arm while the latter pulled the trigger on Nur, resulting in his death. However, this was not the end of his story arc. And as Ozymandias brought his dead body on Traveler's ship, we learned that Traveler's blood and his techno-organic virus had merged with a hint of Nur's blood during their fight, and that this strange mix of blood now had the capability to resurrect Nur. This realization soon turns to reality as Nur returns to life with that inherent capability to understand the sentient ship's advanced celestial technology, even if he had been tainted with a techno-organic virus as well. This moment defined Nur's capabilities for centuries to come, and it was this transformation, or rebirth, that turned him into one of the most powerful beings in the history of the Marvel Universe. He could exert complete control over his body's molecular structure, and while the Traveler was furious that it was his actions that had granted Nur immortality, Nur did remain dependent on the ship to refuel his powers. Given the vehicle's sentient nature, Nur realized that it was slowly gaining sentience, and he eventually went on to build his own sphinx-shaped ship that was based on the Celestial ship. He could accomplish this with some old hieroglyphs, and the more he worked on the ship, the more he realized that its sentient nature was helping it build itself as much as he was building it. Even when he finished all his work, he heard the celestial Isan, the Searcher's voice, call out to him as Apocalypse, and guide him towards using the ship's technology to become a feared entity who can shape the world's destiny. In this way, he was in contact with the Celestials even before he embraced his Apocalypse identity, but this definitely came at a cost, as Isan hinted at how the Celestials would return for payments for their gifts in due time. While this was all about his extensive history, Apocalypse first appeared briefly in X-Factor number 5 in 1986, followed by his first full appearance in X-Factor number 6. Later on, his first full appearance was noted in the X-Factor 6th issue in 1986, Apocalypse Now, which directly picked up from the past issue's battle at the Tomahawk Motor Lodge. While the chaos had attracted the National Guard's attention, the X-Factor had bounced back from a fight against the Alliance of Evil, only for things to worsen with Apocalypse's arrival. While he subdues Mike and Frenzy, he also reminds the others that they have gathered to show the world that mutants are the superior species, then impressively displays his own capabilities against Beast, Mike, and Sue. Unfortunately for him, the X-Factor eventually emerges victorious against the alliance of evil, and a bitter but determined Apocalypse retreats with the promise that he will return to destroy all of humanity, the one power that runs everything else. Coming to the point, Apocalypse's history as one of the few subspecies of the Externals has granted him the ability to constantly evolve to survive and to control his own atomic structure. If this inherent ability wasn't enough, this power was further augmented with celestial technology and exposure to at least 2 techno-organic viruses that were weaponized to boost his abilities. Over the years, Apocalypse was also bestowed with celestial armor when he stepped into the role of the evolutionary caretaker, and his core self-atomic manipulation capabilities grew exponentially strong with time. While it allowed him to restructure and tweak his physiology, this ability also extended to other skills, such as shapeshifting into organic or even metal-based forms, as displayed through instances where he would turn into liquid to dodge attacks, turn his limbs into weapons ranging from hammers and syringes to even hooks, or even grow extra hands or feet for some more support. Other key examples of this capability include instances where he turned his body parts into shields, axes, claws, or even cages to hold children in his torso, as well as changing his own appearance to take others' forms. His atomic control over his body also allows him to alter his size and mass, elongate his limbs or entire torso to dodge attacks, and increase his mobility, as showcased in an instance where he stretched his finger thin to pierce an opponent's skull. Apocalypse's molecular structure also helps him adapt to adverse situations such as unexpected assaults, fatal illnesses, and viruses. Admittedly, he had a hard time fighting against his own daughter's poisonous disease, but it must be noted that he also impressively fought against the techno-organic virus and even used it to his own advantage. On a similar note, he has immensely high immunity and can easily recover from all kinds of injuries. This regeneration is the combined efforts of his techno-organic cells, external origins, and bodily atoms working over time to ensure that he can come back to life with as little as a speck of blood. Naturally, a loss of this level would put him in suspended animation, and in dire situations, he can also recuperate from any injuries with additional help from his celestial technology. As an extension of this ability, Apocalypse also does not need to eat, breathe, or drink to gain energy, and can grant himself new sets of superpowers as per his desires. These powers were first explored in Rise of Apocalypse's 3rd issue, Face of the Gods, which was released in 1996, and started with En Sabah Nur laboring during the construction of the pyramids. This is when his mutant abilities first reveal themselves to the world, as the other workers are taken aback by his superhuman strength, while Nur himself plots ways to seize greater power in Egypt. Strength levels that have actually hurt Thor. Coming to Apocalypse's super strength, there was a time when his capabilities even left Thor entirely wide-eyed and shocked, as demonstrated in the Uncanny Avengers 6th issue in 2013. Apocalypse catches Thor off guard when the Asgardian god is out and about in 1013 AD Scandinavia, where Thor was having a good time fighting against mortals. However, Apocalypse soon arrives at the scene with a promise that today is the day Thor dies at his hands, and soon strikes him down hard enough to send the god flying through the room. If this wasn't enough, the attack disorients Thor to the point where he feels as if his head was taken off, and while he tries to fight back, he realizes that Apocalypse's arm is far too strong for his axe, the Yarnbjorn. This is just one of the instances where Apocalypse's raw strength against literal gods comes to light. And to put things into context, he could further augment this power by psionically calling upon external energy sources. He has managed to hold his fort against the Hulk, Black Bolt, and Thor, who quite literally felt an impact similar to someone sending shockwaves at a speed of 100 miles. Time and again, Apocalypse has also overpowered Colossus, Polaris, and Magneto. And during the Krakoan era, he even ripped several Stark Sentinel Mark IIs apart and destroyed Wrongslide with the raw strength of his hands to feed his blood to a near-fatal Krakoa. If this is not enough, he had once hit Emma Frost hard enough to send her flying off the Krakoan island, and while he can exert such intense strength, he is also nearly invulnerable to any incoming attacks. His celestial armor protects him from extreme temperatures, lethal radiation, and any powerful attacks, and he could even catch and spit out bullets casually without blinking an eye. His celestial arsenals of blasts, portals, and force fields. While his defensive capabilities are unmatched, Apocalypse also has an impressive range of inbuilt attack mechanisms powered by his celestial energy manipulation. While this was evident in the instance where he threw Thor through buildings and blasted him with raw energy in the Uncanny Avengers 6th issue, let's get into the details of how this power really manifests. For starters, It is derived from the celestial tech fused into his body, and while his mutant gene gave him a whole range of powers, this ability specifically comes from his ties to the Celestials. He could use this metaphysical energy force to create illusions and memories, reconstruct matter, destroy or build bodily tissues, and even absorb energy from external sources. Moreover, he could use this energy to channel pure destructive energy in the form of concussive blasts from his limbs, eyes, or even bodily energy waves. As an extension of this, he could also create energy tornadoes, breathe pure energy, conjure portals and force fields to protect allies such as Caliban, or even trap opponents such as Exodus. During one particular arc, he even discovered that he could lend or share his capabilities with others through energy transfer, a process that can be likened to Galactus's power transfer to a chosen herald. Finally, Apocalypse could teleport himself as well as others across places, but this power was artificially generated and only available in situations where he had access to celestial technology at his headquarters or through his armor. The telepath and telekinetic side fans forget. While most fans associate Apocalypse with death and destruction, his powers are quite versatile, and he has an impressive range of psionic capabilities. These powers were brought to light in 1991 in the X-Factor comic's 68th issue, where Nathan pulls Jean onto the astral plane to help him fight against a techno-organic virus, only for Apocalypse to also show up in his mind. In this situation, Apocalypse showcases his telepathic skills and fights against a weakened Jean Grey within Nathan's psyche space. And while this interaction ends with Cyclops stabbing Apocalypse with a psionic sword, his telepathic skills are not to be underestimated. For starters, he shares a telepathic link with other externals that lets him know their whereabouts at all times, and he can even use it to contact them for help in dire situations. This link also alerts him to when any of the externals rise from their first death, as well as when they are killed by another one of their kind. Apocalypse can also use telekinesis to levitate himself, manipulate other beings or objects psionically, conjure astral projections, and even control others' minds. And his connection to celestial technology also allows him to mentally link and control any and all kinds of tech and machinery out there. While these are impressive abilities, the cherry on the cake is that he is immune to any incoming telepathic attacks of the same kind, and he could not only resist these intrusions, but also counteract them. He had once boasted that even telepaths on the same level as Rachel Summers couldn't breach his mind unless he was poisoned or weakened, and even in this situation, he did manage to push her out at last. Why killing him permanently is nearly impossible. Coming to his near invulnerability, his status as an external established that he was blessed with immortality long before he even came in touch with a celestial ship. By this point, he had already lived for 1,000 years, and every time he was indisposed or destroyed, he had definitely returned by resurrecting himself. After his capabilities were further boosted by celestial technology and the techno-organic virus, his methods of returning to life became even more advanced and unique than those of other externals. However, it must be noted that he did share one weakness with his species, and that he could be killed if his life force was drained or if his heart was eaten by another external. That being said, this was a rare event, and it also came with the conditions that he would return to life in case the same external failed to kill other externals. Now, Apocalypse's first major apparent death did take place in the X-Factor's 68th issue finale, wherein Cyclops first stabs Apocalypse with a psionic sword in the astral plane before he combines his own strength with Jean and Nathan to defeat him in the real world as well. This scene marked Apocalypse's alleged death, but to no one's surprise, he reappeared in later issues through regenerative abilities bestowed upon him through celestial technology. The 12, his biggest power grab in comic history. Now, you'd think that all of these capabilities are more than one could ever ask for, but Apocalypse is no regular villain, and his greed for higher power drove him towards a master plan to siphon power from 12 mutants. In 2000, the Uncanny X-Men number 376 revealed Apocalypse's attempts to secure a new host body by hunting down the most incredibly powerful mutants destined to alter history, aka the 12. At this time, Wolverine was among the first ones to fall for his plan, and while he ended up going feral and even fighting his own peers as the Horsemen of Death, he eventually snapped free from Apocalypse's control. Unfortunately, at this point, Apocalypse no longer needed the Horsemen, and he used the distraction created by their endeavors to capture the 12, starting with Cyclops, Phoenix, Sunfire, Professor X, Storm, Iceman, and Magneto, and then expanding to other mutants, such as Polaris, Bishop, the Living Monolith, Cable, and Mikhail Rasputin. He then intended to siphon their energies into the monolith before transferring it to Nate Gray, who would then serve as the host while Apocalypse would take control over his body and claim it as his own. Thankfully, the Cable Comics 76 issue revealed that Cyclops thwarted this plan by merging with Apocalypse instead, thereby ruining all possibilities of him taking over Nate Gray and putting an end to his lust for higher power. How the movies simplified a god. There is no doubt that Apocalypse was a magnificent villain in the comics, but when he first appeared in the live-action films in X-Men Apocalypse in 2017, you'd find that his powers were tweaked to adapt to the script. Portrayed by Oscar Isaac, this Apocalypse was believed to be the very first mutant ever, and he had godlike status and a reputation as a savior. While this sounds familiar, his powers did contrast with the comic version's abilities, and his primary ability was now essence transference. This involved transferring his own essence and consciousness from one host to another, essentially making a graveyard out of his old host's damaged bodies while he conveniently moves on to the next. Moreover, with each host, he also gained their set of capabilities and absorbed them into his consciousness so that they lived on even after he transferred his essence to the next one, which allowed him to live indefinitely. This growing range of capabilities helped him develop a kind of virtual immortality, and his hosts also underwent transformations to gain Apocalypse's features, such as his skin color. In one such example, Professor Xavier lost his hair when Apocalypse took control over his body, and what is truly astounding is the fact that he could do this to anyone against their wishes. The host did not need to consent to this transference, and once the process was complete, they even lost their personal consciousness and essentially became a vehicle for Apocalypse's essence until he moved on and left them for dead. The live-action version also had powers such as portal generation, knowledge absorption, and matter manipulation, in addition to the ability to bestow certain powers upon other lesser-powered beings. These powers definitely contrast against the comic version's matter manipulation abilities, and while they are similar, the live-action does pick and choose from the comic version's larger toolkit for his big screen debut. Where he actually came from on the page. Coming back to the comic pages, Bob Layton first introduced the idea of a villain like Apocalypse while drafting the first few issues of X-Factor. Interestingly, this villain was initially supposed to be the Daredevil antagonist, the Owl, but when Layton left the project, writer Louise Simonson filled in, along with editor Bob Harris. Harris's view was that the villain should be an A-level villain like Magneto, but with even higher stakes, and that it would have to be someone who can give a true fight to the X-Factor team. The team needed a reason to exist, and Simonson then described the villain as a big bad villain, which is what eventually inspired Apocalypse's creation. And that's all for this one, folks. While Apocalypse started out as a young slave turned mutant, his clashes with higher powers continued to make him stronger and stronger, which is truly a feat, considering the fact that he started out as an external. From that point on, he went on to champion the life-threatening techno-organic virus and even used celestial tech as a tool for higher power, leaving me truly impressed with his capabilities. I mean, mutants with superhuman strength, psionic powers, energy manipulation, and immortality all in one package are hard to come by. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on Apocalypse's godlike capabilities in the comments section down below. Till we meet again,